family arguments can cut deeper than any fight with a stranger. Because when it's family, it's not about who's right, it's about who's hurt. Most people try to win the argument, but in the process, they lose the peace. Ending a family argument the right way isn't about silence or walking away. It's about controlling what you say, how you say it, and when to stop saying anything at all. The right way to end a family argument starts with understanding one simple truth. You can't control how they act, but you can control what energy you feed. That's the line between reaction and response, and that's the difference between chaos and peace. Most of the time, family arguments aren't really about the words being said. They're about old ones, about pride, about someone not feeling heard for years. So when the argument starts, it's rarely about what's happening right now. It's about everything that's ever been left unsaid. That's why no matter how logical you try to sound, it doesn't land. Because logic doesn't calm emotion. Presence does. Tone does. Patience does. When we're hurt, we want control. We want the other person to feel what we feel. And the easiest way to do that, raise our voice, talk over them, throw words like weapons. But here's the thing, once your tone rises, your influence drops. People stop listening the moment they feel attacked. Even if you're right, the way you deliver it determines whether it's received or rejected. You've probably noticed this: when you yell, they yell back. When you interrupt, they interrupt too. Suddenly, no one's listening. Everyone's defending. That's not communication anymore. That's emotional ping pong. You're just hitting pain back and forth. So the first move in ending a family argument isn't talking, it's stopping. Not to ignore, but to reset. To take a breath long enough for your mind to catch up with your mouth. Because in heated moments, your mind goes quiet and your emotions get loud. You don't think to understand, you think to win. But winning an argument doesn't feel good if you lose your peace doing it. When you choose to stay calm, it's not weakness, it's mastery. Calm doesn't mean you don't care, it means you refuse to add gasoline to a fire that's already burning. You've probably seen people say, I can't just stay quiet, that means they win. No, silence doesn't mean they win. Silence means you've stopped playing a game that nobody wins. Lowering your voice isn't giving in, it's taking control back. When everyone's loud, the calm voice becomes the strongest in the room because calm carries weight. It forces people to listen. It reminds them that you're not there to fight, you're there to understand. The next time a family argument starts, don't try to fix the entire situation right there. Don't throw solutions while emotions are high. Instead, anchor yourself. Pay attention to your tone, your breathing, your body language. Those three things can shift the entire energy in the room. Look at how you're standing. Are your shoulders tight, arms crossed, voice sharp? That body language screams defensiveness. But when you listen your posture, take a slow breath and keep your voice steady, the conversation naturally follows your lead. You don't need to convince anyone in that moment. You just need to stay grounded. Because emotions are contagious. If you escalate, they escalate. If you slow down, they start to slow down too. That's leadership inside a family. And let's be real, family arguments often trigger your oldest versions of yourself. Around family, you're not the adult you are in the world. You're the child they remember. The one who felt misunderstood, judged, or never enough. That's why family fights hit differently. They touch the old scars you forgot were there. So when you feel that wave of emotion rise, it's not always about them. Sometimes it's your past speaking through you. That's why emotional control is everything. It's not about controlling the other person. It's about managing the younger version of you that wants to scream back. You calm that voice down by remembering who you are now. You're not here to prove yourself anymore. You're here to protect your peace. So the next time you're mid-argument and it's getting heated, do something unexpected. Pause. Not the dramatic silent treatment, but a genuine pause. You can say, I want to keep talking about this, but not like this. Let's take a minute. That one line can shift everything. It shows you're not running away, you're choosing a better moment to speak. That's strength. Because here's the truth, the person who keeps their cool controls the room. You've seen this in every setting, at work, in friendships, even in traffic. The loudest person may look strong, but the calmest person is always in charge. The same applies to family. And when you start responding calmly, something amazing happens. People start feeling safe around your presence, even if they don't say it. They may not agree with you, but they'll trust that you won't explode. And that's how peace slowly rebuilds, through trust, not through shouting matches. Ending a family argument the right way isn't about who apologizes first. It's about who grows first. Because the person who chooses maturity changes the pattern for everyone else. You break cycles by doing what's uncommon, by staying soft where others expect you to be sharp. It's not easy. Staying calm when you feel disrespected takes practice. It takes humility. It takes remembering that your peace is more valuable than your point. And when you truly understand that, you stop needing the last word. You stop needing them to get it. You just let the truth sit and walk away knowing your silence said more than your words ever could. Because ending a family argument isn't about the perfect comeback. It's about emotional discipline. It's saying, I'll guard my peace even when you don't guard yours. That doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you choose your battles wisely. You decide what's worth responding to and what's not. And if they keep pushing, remember this, you don't owe every comment a reply. You don't have to prove your calmness, just embody it. The less you explain yourself, the more they'll eventually understand. So the right way to end a family argument, you end it by ending your participation in the emotional chaos. You speak slowly, you breathe deeply, and you let silence work for you instead of against you. You set the tone, and in doing that, you remind everyone that peace isn't weakness, it's wisdom in motion. And one day, when they see that no matter how loud they get, you don't lose yourself, they'll realize the argument ended not because you backed down, but because you grew up. Never try to fix the argument while emotions are still burning. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn because our instinct tells us the exact opposite. Our instinct says, I need to explain myself, I need to make them see my side. I need to end this right now. But instinct is rarely your ally in the heat of family conflict. Instinct wants speed, but wisdom wants timing. Instinct wants to win, wisdom wants resolution. Think about how family arguments usually start. One small comment escalates into a reminder of every past mistake. Voices rise, hearts race, and suddenly you're not talking about what you said 5 minutes ago. You're talking about 5 years of frustration, 5 months of disappointment, and all the things that were never said. Your brain is on fire, and your emotions are driving the car. In that moment, trying to fix it is like trying to repair a bridge while it's collapsing under an earthquake. When emotions are hot, logic doesn't land. Facts don't matter. Apologies don't matter. You could prepare the most perfect argument in the world, but if it's delivered in anger, it will hit like a hammer, destructive, not constructive. People only hear what matches the intensity of their current feelings. If they're angry, they'll hear attack. If they're defensive, they'll hear blame. So trying to reason or fix things in that moment usually just makes the fire burn brighter. The first step is to recognize that you cannot control their emotional state, only yours. And that's powerful. You can't make them calm down. You can't make them admit they're wrong. You can't make them listen. But you can stop escalating. You can slow your breathing. You can choose your words carefully. You can pause. That's how you start controlling the argument without controlling them. Pausing isn't ignoring. Pausing isn't surrender. Pausing is strategy. It's giving both parties a moment to reset, to reflect, to remember what matters more than being right. A well-timed pause communicates respect, self-control, and emotional maturity. It tells your family, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to solve this, but not at the cost of losing myself. That's something people rarely understand, but it's transformative. You see, family arguments are different from arguments with friends or coworkers. With family, there's history. There's unspoken expectation. There's love mixed with frustration. And that mix makes it impossible to untangle with quick fixes. That's why trying to resolve things too soon often backfires. You may think you're closing the chapter, but really you're just slapping a bandage over a wound that needs time to heal. Waiting doesn't mean avoiding the problem. Waiting means preparing to address it effectively. Waiting allows you to calm your mind, to examine your role in the argument, and to consider the perspective of the other person without the heat of emotion clouding your judgment. Waiting gives clarity. And clarity is where real solutions live. During this waiting period, focus on your own behavior. Ask yourself questions like, am I responding because I want to be heard or because I want to teach them a lesson? Am I escalating this argument for my ego or am I seeking peace? The moment you answer honestly, you shift from reactive to intentional. And intentionality is the antidote to chaos. Another important point trying to fix the argument immediately often leads to over-explaining. You feel the need to justify yourself, to prove you're right, to convince them. But over-explaining in anger is toxic. It's like pouring oil on the fire. Your words, no matter how true, are received as attacks. People instinctively defend themselves, which only prolongs the conflict. If you wait, your words later carry weight because they're calm, thoughtful, and deliberate. They're not the sound of a person fighting. They're the sound of someone choosing peace. Patience also sets an example. When you refuse to fix things in the heat of the moment, you demonstrate to your family that maturity isn't reactive. Maturity is reflective. It's understanding that words spoken in anger are rarely words you'll be proud of. You teach them silently that it's possible to disagree without destroying relationships. That lesson is more powerful than any argument you might win in the moment. Waiting also gives space for self-reflection on the other side. Sometimes a pause allows your family member to realize their own role in the argument. They may calm down, they may reconsider, they may recognize their own words were hurtful. You don't force this. You just create the environment where reflection can occur naturally. It's not always easy. Emotions scream at you to speak, to correct, to defend, to end it immediately. But the most courageous thing you can do is delay that gratification. You delay for clarity. You delay for peace. You delay for love, not just your own, but the love you still feel for your family. Even in the tension of the moment, Waiting also teaches humility. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking more about what matters. It's realizing that no argument, no matter how right you are, is worth losing connection with your family. It's realizing that the argument doesn't define your relationship, your response does. And often the response that matters most is the one that comes after the emotions cool, not during the chaos. So the next time a family argument erupts, resist the urge to fix it immediately. Don't try to rationalize, apologize, or explain until both sides have had the chance to breathe. Step back, calm your body, slow your speech, reflect, wait. Because timing matters more than words, and composure matters more than victory. In that waiting, in that pause, you reclaim your power. Not the power to control others, but the power to remain yourself, calm, clear, grounded, and unshakable. And when the right time comes to speak, you speak with impact. Your words land, not because you shouted, but because you listened, reflected, and waited. That's how arguments end the right way, not with immediate fixes, but with patience, perspective, and presence. Because family arguments aren't solved in moments. They're solved in the way you choose to respond, not when emotions are hot, but when wisdom is ready. Respect doesn't mean agreement. It means knowing when to stop fighting for it. This is one of the hardest lessons to grasp in family conflicts because instinct tells us that if someone disrespects us, we must correct them immediately. But that's exactly where most people go wrong. They confuse respect with validation and they mistake being heard for being right. In family arguments, chasing agreement is like trying to catch the wind. It's unpredictable, exhausting, and often impossible. Respect isn't something that can be demanded. You can't force someone to see your perspective. You can't make them acknowledge your feelings, your point of view, or even your patience. You can, however, control how much power you give to the argument. And that's where the real wisdom lies, knowing when to stop, knowing when to step back and refuse to feed negativity. Knowing that sometimes the strongest act isn't saying more, it's saying nothing. Family arguments often escalate because everyone is trying to prove themselves. Everyone wants their truth to matter more than the connection that holds the family together. But respect, real respect, doesn't come from winning arguments. It comes from boundaries. It comes from self-control. It comes from refusing to be dragged into battles that don't honor your dignity or the relationship. Think about it this way: if you argue until you're blue in the face, you may win the words, but you lose peace. You may feel justified, but you risk damaging the relationship. And family relationships aren't like other relationships. They're built over a lifetime, layered with history, emotion, and unconditional love. Every harsh word or impatient rebuttal chips away at that foundation. Every moment spent trying to force agreement creates distance. Respect, however, strengthens that foundation. Respect preserves it. So, how do you stop fighting for agreement without giving up on connection? It starts with recognizing that agreement is not the goal. The goal is understanding, compassion, and harmony. You may not see eye to eye, and that's okay. You don't have to convince them that your perspective is better. You only have to decide that their disagreement won't dictate your peace or your behavior. This requires courage because it's counterintuitive. Your instinct screams, stand your ground, be heard, don't let them walk over you. But what Jefferson Fisher teaches us is that strength isn't measured by volume, persistence, or aggression. Strength is measured by restraint. Strength is measured by choosing peace over pride, calm over chaos, and connection over being right. Respecting without agreeing also means choosing your battles wisely. Not every comment, insult, or provocation deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding needs clarification. Sometimes the most powerful act is silence. Silence isn't submission, it's strategy. It's a declaration that you will not let emotional volatility control you. It's a boundary that protects your mental and emotional space. And in family dynamics, boundaries are the most respectful form of love you can show, both to yourself and to others. Another aspect of respecting without agreeing is learning to accept imperfection, both in yourself and in your family. No one is perfect. You're not perfect. They're not perfect. Arguments often happen because we forget this truth and expect perfection from others or even from ourselves. Accepting imperfection doesn't mean tolerating abuse or mistreatment. It means recognizing that disagreement and conflict are part of being human, and they don't have to destroy the bond you share. This also requires emotional intelligence. You have to be aware of how your words, tone, and actions affect the other person. You have to monitor your own triggers and avoid projecting past pain onto the present conflict. And you must practice empathy, not to justify their behavior, but to maintain your own composure. Empathy allows you to see their perspective without getting lost in it. It allows you to respond with thoughtfulness rather than reflexive emotion. One of the most common mistakes people make in family arguments is conflating respect with compliance. They think, if they respected me, they would see my point, but that's not respect, that's control. True respect doesn't require agreement. True respect allows space for differences. True respect preserves dignity, even in disagreement. When you embrace this principle, you free yourself from the endless cycle of trying to convince, explain, or justify. You stop pouring energy into battles that cannot be won, and you redirect that energy toward peace and understanding. Knowing when to stop also builds influence in a way that yelling, insisting, or arguing never can. People notice calmness, composure, and dignity. They notice when someone refuses to be dragged into chaos. And over time, that silent, steady influence encourages others to rise to the same level of self-control. You can't force respect, but you can model it, and modeling it often changes the dynamics more effectively than words ever could. Finally, respecting without agreeing is about choosing your own emotional well-being over temporary victory. You get to decide what you will and will not internalize. You get to decide whether the argument will define your mood, your day, or your relationship. And by doing so, you protect yourself from the corrosive effects of unnecessary conflict. In essence, ending a family argument doesn't require them to understand, acknowledge, or validate your point. It requires you to act with maturity, wisdom, and self-control. It requires you to stop fighting for respect as if it were something external and instead claim it internally. You respect yourself enough to not engage in pointless conflict. You respect the relationship enough to preserve it beyond the argument. And in doing so, you become the example everyone else can follow, whether they recognize it or not. So remember, this respect doesn't mean agreement. Respect means setting boundaries, maintaining composure, modeling maturity, and knowing when to step away. It's about protecting peace over proving points. It's about being firm without being aggressive, calm without being passive, and loving without being manipulated. And when you master this, you end family arguments not with noise, not with victory, but with dignity. You end them on your terms, steady, unshaken, and unbothered. Because in the end, the person who understands that respect is not earned through agreement, but demonstrated through composure, is the person who transforms conflict into connection. So remember this, family arguments are not battles to be won. They are moments to be navigated with wisdom, patience, and calm. You cannot control how others act, but you can control your own energy. You cannot fix things while emotions are burning, but you can choose to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. And you do not need agreement to command respect. Sometimes the greatest respect comes from knowing when to step back and preserve peace. Ending a family argument the right way is not about speaking the last word. It is about holding your composure, protecting your peace, and showing up with maturity even when others cannot. It's about choosing connection over ego, understanding over conflict, and calm over chaos. Walk away knowing that you've done everything within your power to respond with wisdom, not reaction. Because when you master this, you stop losing yourself in the arguments that matter least and start holding space for the relationships that matter most. And that is how peace wins, not by force, but by quiet, unwavering control.